Welcome back class to the news of 29th May from the newspaper The Hindu, and if you are preparing for any government examination you can visit our website isbio.com or exammap.com, or you can contact us on our WhatsApp number. So let's start the video. First topic is Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme. So this scheme was launched as a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat package announced in May 2020 to mitigate the distress caused by coronavirus induced lockdown by providing credit to different sectors, especially micro, small and medium enterprises, that is MSMEs, and 100% guarantee coverage is being provided by the National Credit Guarantee Trustee Company, whereas banks and non-banking financial companies, that is NBFC, provide loans. So the credit will provide in the form of a guarantee emergency credit line facility, and no guarantee fee shall be charged by NCGTC from the member lending institution under the scheme, and interest rates under the scheme will be capped at 9.25% for banks and financial institutions and 14% for NBFCs. So the eligibility for this scheme: borrowers with the credit outstanding up to 50 crore as on 29 February 2020 and with an annual turnover of up to 250 crores are eligible under the scheme. And on 1st August 2020, the government widened the scope of rupees 3 lakh crore under this scheme by doubling the upper ceiling of loans outstanding and including certain loans given to professionals like doctors, lawyers and chartered accountants for business purpose under this scheme. And what was the significance of this scheme? That it is expected to provide credit to the sector at low cost, whereby enabling MSMEs to meet their operational liabilities and restart their businesses, and by supporting MSMEs to continue functioning during the current unprecedented situation. And the scheme is also expected to have positive impact on the economy, and the support is revival. So there is a term for the non-banking financial companies, that is NBFCs. So NBFCs are the company registered under Companies Act 1956, which is engaged in a business of loans and advances, acquisition of shares, stocks, bonds, debentures and securities issued by government or local authority or other marketable securities. And these NBFCs lend and make investments, but some are the facts that make different NBFCs from the banks, and these are that: first one is they cannot accept demand deposits. Second one is they do not form part of payment and settlement system. Third one is they cannot issue checks drawn on itself. Fourth one is they are regulated by multiple regulators. Fifth one is the norm of public sector lending not applied to NBFCs, and CRR, cash reserve requirements, not applied to NBFCs. So these are 6 points which make it different from other banks. So the next topic is reclining Buddha. So the reclining Buddha statue or image represents the Buddha during his last illness, about to enter parinirvana, and this parinirvana is the stage of great salvation after that can only be attained by enlightened souls. And Mahaparinirvana of Buddha is supposed to be a very important event that happened in Kushinagar. It is not simply a demise, it is great demise after which there is no birth for him. And the Buddha's death came when he was 80 years old in a state of meditation in the Kushinagar in the eastern Uttar Pradesh, close to state's border with Bihar, and it signifies the Buddha's last diksha, that is, even while on his deathbed, he took a follower into the fold. So, reclining Buddha in India are cave number 26 of UNESCO World Heritage Site of Ajanta, contains 24-foot long and 9-foot tall sculpture of reclining Buddha, believed to have carved in the 5th century AD, and it shows the Buddha reclining on his right side, and behind him are two sal trees. At the base of the sculpture has begging bowl and a water pitcher and walking stick. And Kushinagar, where the Buddha actually attained parinirvana, has a 6-meter long red sandstone monolith statue of reclining Buddha inside parinirvana stupa. So other depictions of Buddha, that in India there are a lot of Buddhas in sitting postures, mostly pertaining to his enlightenment rather than to his demise. And at the Mahabodhi temple, the Buddha is sitting at Bhumi Sparsh Mudra, where his hand is pointing towards the ground. At Sarnath, Buddha gave his first sermon. The stone statue has a hand gesture called the Dharma Chakra Mudra, which signifies preaching. It is also most popular depiction in India along with the Bodhi tree depiction, and the Buddha statues found in Southeast Asia are an amalgamation of all his various postures, life events, including Mahaparinirvana, but not limited to it. Next topic is GST compensation. So after the introduction of GST, states have very limited taxation rights, as most of the taxes bearing those on petroleum, alcohol and stamp duty were subsumed by under GST, and GST accounts for almost 42% of states' own tax revenues, and tax revenues account for around 60% of states' total revenues. So under GST Compensation to States Act 2017, states are guaranteed compensation for less of revenue on account of implementation of GST for transition period of 5 years from 2017 to 2022, and the compensation is calculated based on the difference between the state's current GST revenue and protected revenue after estimating an annualized 14% growth rate from the base year of 2015-16. So what was the logic behind to launch GST compensation? In the theory, the GST should generate as much as revenue as the previous tax regime, and the new tax regime is taxed on consumption and not factoring, and this means that the tax won't be levied at a place of production, which also means manufacturing states would lose out, and has several states strongly opposed the idea of GST. It was as usage these states, the idea of compensation was mooted, and to make this promise watertight, the idea of compensation was both written into constitution and final details passed by the way of central legislation. Next topic is line of control. So line of control, that is LOC, emerged from 1948 as ceasefire negotiated by United Nations after Kashmir war, and it was designated as LOC in 1972 following the Shimla Agreement between the two countries, and the Shimla Agreement was signed between India and Pakistan, which would govern the future bilateral relations between these two countries, and it is delineated on a map signed by DGMOs of both armies and has the international sanctity of a legal agreement. So the part is that under Indian control is known as state of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, and Pakistani controlled part is divided into Azad Jammu and Kashmir and Gilgit Baltistan. So the northernmost point of LOC is known as NJ9842. So if UPSC asks about the NJ9842, what it refers to, so it is the northernmost point of LOC, that is line of control, and how LOC is different from LAC. LAC is between India and China's border areas, and it is not agreed upon by two countries, neither delineated on a map nor demarcated on the ground. So LAC is neither delineated on map or not demarcated on ground. It is a demarcation that separates Indian controlled territory from Chinese controlled territory, and it is divided into three sectors: eastern sector, which spans Arunachal Pradesh and Sikkim, middle sector in Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh, and western sector in Ladakh. So the alignment of LAC in eastern sector is along 1914 McMahon line, and there are minor disputes about the position on the ground, and the line in middle sector is least controversial, but the for precise alignment to follow it in Barahoti Plains, and the major disagreements are in the western sector, where LAC emerged from two letters written by Chinese Prime Minister to Prime Minister of India Jawaharlal Nehru in 1959, after he had first mentioned such a line in 1956. Next topic is safe harbor provisions. So they have been defined under section 79 of IT Act and protect social media intermediaries by giving them immunity from legal prosecution of any content posted on their platforms. So this protection act says shall be applicable if said intermediary does not in any way initiate the transmission of the message in question, select the receiver of the transmitted message, and does not modify any information contained in the transmission. So this means that as long as platform acts just as the messenger carrying a message from point A to point B without interfering in any message from point A to B without interfering in any manner, it will safe from any legal prosecution above brought upon due to the message being transmitted. And however, it is not granted if intermediary, despite being informed or notified by government or its agencies, and does not immediately disable access to material under question. So the intermediary must not tamper with any evidence of these messages or content present on its platform, failing which it lose its protection under the Act. So what are the intermediary guidelines and digital media ethics code? So in February 2021, the guidelines had asked all social media platforms to set up grievance redressal and compliance mechanisms. It included appointing a resident grievance officer and compliance officer and a nodal contact person, and the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology had also asked these platforms to submit monthly reports on complaints, and a third requirement was for instant messaging apps was to make provisions for tracking the first originator of message, and failure to comply with any of these requirements would take away the indemnity provided to social media intermediaries under the section 79 of Information IT Act. Next topic is International Civil Aviation Organization. It is a United Nations specialized agency established in 1944, which laid the foundation for the standards and procedures of peaceful global air navigation. The Convention of International Civil Aviation, signed on 7th December 1944 in Chicago, and established the core principles permitting the international transport by air, and led to the creation of International Civil Aviation Organization. And its one of the objectives is to foster the planning and development of international air transport so as to ensure the safe and orderly growth of international civil aviation. And India is the part of this organization with 193 members and headquartered in Montreal, Canada. Next topic is Quad. So it is a four nation alliance of India, Australia, USA, and Japan, which was established in 2007, and it dubbed as Asian or mini NATO, and is viewed as counterbalance to China's military and economic clout in Indo-Pacific region. And in 2020, US-China Economic Security Review Commission shows China's growing power projection along Indian Ocean rim with military or economic activities, countries like Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Myanmar, and Bangladesh. And the Quad, which used to be known as Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, is known as Quadrilateral Framework to indicate it has gone beyond a narrow security dialogue. So the participation in Malabar exercise is related to this Quad countries. All four, Japan, India, Australia, and USA, took part in Malabar exercise, and it is an annual trilateral naval exercise between navies of India, Japan, and USA, alternately held in Indian Pacific Oceans. Next topic is ACCR, that is Ayush Clinical Case Repository Portal and Ayush Sanjeevani app. So ACCR portal is dedicated section for reporting and publishing details of COVID-19 cases treated through Ayush system, and it is conceptualized and developed by Ministry of Ayush as a platform to support both Ayush practitioners and the public. It welcomes Ayush practitioners from all over the world to enroll and share the information about successfully treated cases for the benefit of all, and it covers all 7 systems of Ayush, that is Ayurveda, Yoga, Naturopathy, Unani, Siddha, Homeopathy, and Sova Rigpa. And the significance of this portal is to aggregate information about clinical outcomes achieved by Ayush practitioners on large scale, and also facilitate not just dissemination of information but also further analysis and research, and expected to document the strength of Ayush systems for treatment of various diseases. So about Ayush Sanjeevani app, it facilitates significant study and documentation regarding efficacy of selected Ayush interventions, including Ayush 64 and Kavasura Kudineer medicines, and it will help to generate data on acceptance and developed by Ministry of Ayush and MITI, reach out to target of 50 lakh people. Next topic is Pension Fund Regulatory and Development Authority. So it is a statutory body established by an act of parliament to promote old age income security by establishing, developing, and regulating pension funds to protect the interests of subscribers to the schemes of pension funds and for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, and it performs functions of appointing various intermediate agencies like pension fund managers, central record keeping agencies, and it develops, promotes, and regulates the pension industry under National Pension System and administer the Atal Pension Yojana. So Atal Pension Yojana launched on 9th May of 2015 with the objective of creating universal social security system for all Indians, especially the poor, underprivileged, and workers in unorganized sector, and it is administered by Pension Fund Regulatory and Development Authority and through National Pension System, and any citizen of India can join Atal Pension Yojana scheme, and the age for the subscriber is between 18 to 40 years. The contribution levels would be low if a subscriber joins early and increases if joins late. So the benefits of this Atal Pension Yojana scheme is it provides minimum guaranteed pension ranging from 1,000 to 5,000 on the attaining age of 60 years, and amount of pension is guaranteed for lifetime to spouse of death of the subscribers, and the death of both subscribers and spouse, the entire pension corpus paid to the nominee. So the contributions to the Atal Pension Yojana are eligible for tax benefits similar to National Pension System. So National Pension System is a government sponsored pension scheme. It was launched in 2004 for government employees, and now any individual citizen of India in the age group of 18 to 65 years can join this national pension system. Next topic is total lunar eclipse and supermoon. So the supermoon, NASA notes that a supermoon occurs when moon's orbit closest to Earth at the same time the moon is full, and as moon orbits closest to the Earth, there is a point of time when the distance between the two is least and known as perigee. and at the point of time when the distance of the orbit of the moon far is known as apogee. So when the full moon appears at the point when the distance between the earth and moon least, not only does it appear to be brighter, but it is also larger than the regular full moon. And the term supermoon was coined by the astrologer Richard Nolle in 1979. And in a typical year, there may be 2 to 4 full supermoons and 2 to 4 new supermoons in a row. What is lunar eclipse? So it is a phenomena which occurs when moon and sun are on opposite sides of earth. So the phenomena occurring during the full moon, and a full moon happens when moon and sun are on opposite sides of earth, which allows the person to see entire lit up side which looks like a round disk in the night sky, and the moon will also appear to be red because of total lunar eclipse. Next topic was WHO BioHub. So BioHub will enable member states to share biological materials and via BioHub under pre-agreed conditions including biosafety, biosecurity and other applicable regulations. The facility will help in safe reception, sequencing, storage and preparation of biological materials for distribution to other laboratories so as to facilitate global preparedness against these pathogens, and it would based in Spice, Switzerland, and pathogens are presently shared bilateral between countries, a process that can be sluggish and deny the benefits to some. So the significance of this that it will ensure timeliness and predictability in response activities, and it is significant in the view of novel coronavirus disease pandemic and need to underline the importance of sharing pathogen information to assess risk, and it will help contribute to establishment of international exchange system for novel coronavirus and other emerging pathogens. Thank you class.